let me just tell you, 6.6 million jobless claims, that's a big number, and it's one reason the Fed is doing what they're doing. Now, they're going ahead with another $2.3 trillion in lending facilities. This is a very detailed, extensive list of new Fed actions, so try to follow along here. They're going to buy, which we already basically knew, some of those PPP loans, the Paycheck Protection Plan loans from the SBA. They're going to buy those from banks, enabling banks to make additional loans. They're going to buy $600 billion in small and medium-sized enterprise loans backed by $75 billion from the Treasury. This is the Main Street borrowing facility. Talk more about that in a moment. They will increase their corporate bond buying to $850 billion, backed by another $85 billion from the Treasury. They're also setting up the possibility of taking some junk onto their balance sheet if by March 22nd, which was the original corporate bond deadline, they had bought or you were offering investment grade rated paper that was then downgraded. They will take some double Bs in that case. They will lend $500 billion to states and municipalities, backed by another $35 billion from the Treasury. And they will, in addition to their corporate bond buying, they're going to add buying of AAA-rated commercial mortgage-backed securities and loans. So they're buying CLOs as well. Let's talk about the Main Street facility, Alex. They're going to make 4-year loans to companies who employ up to 10,000 workers or who have revenues of less than $2.5 billion. One presumes it's 500 employees up to 10,000 because the PPP program goes to people with 500 or less. The principal and interest payments would be deferred for 1 year. Banks will make the loans. They will keep 5% of the loan and sell 95% of it to a special purpose vehicle that the Fed is creating. Interestingly enough, banks and the Fed will take equal risk here. Banks are going to have to assume some risk in making these loans. Borrowers must make what the Fed says are reasonable efforts to retain their employees, and they have to follow the same rules as the other lending programs: no buybacks, dividends, or compensation increases for officers. Let's talk about the municipal loan facility. This could be a big one. They're going to buy up to $500 billion in short-term notes directly from states, counties with a population of at least 2 million, and cities with a population of at least 1 million. Now, states may borrow from the Fed and then lend that on to smaller cities and counties. So an enormous amount coming from the Fed this morning. $2.3 trillion is their estimate for the additional lending facilities. They can lend now to small and medium-sized enterprises with up to 10,000 employees. They can lend money to municipalities, cities, and states and counties, and they can also take on additional corporate debt and also collateralized loan obligations and commercial-backed mortgages. So a lot of additional assistance for the economy, Alex, from the Federal Reserve.
So a quick question before we kind of get with some more analysis on this. I think a fair question for me to ask is, what are they not buying right now? Legit question.
Well, specifically, they are not buying junk-rated bonds. As I mentioned, there is a possibility to take some on if you were offering securities as of the start date for the program that have since been downgraded one notch. They could take those on, but they're not buying junk. That's been one of the issues, one of the things that Democrats in Congress in particular have been urging them to do. But under the law, the Fed can't lose money. Also, if they took on those securities, it would cost them more because the interest rates are much higher on junk, and that would mean they would have less firepower from the Treasury. That $450 billion more that would have to go into the junk market, and they would have less available for other lending. So that's still out there as something they're not doing, and of course these programs could always be scaled up and expanded. Going to be interesting to see how fast they all get online and how soon money gets out the door.